Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Mets Daily on the Fan Arch Network. John Saponaro here with you today and every day to talk about our New York Mets. But of course, before we get started, a quick shout out goes to our friends over at Kalshi for sponsoring the video for a limited time. Use the code FANARCHBASEBALL on the Kalshi app to get $10 when you trade 10. Well, the Mets rebound. They take a nice, tidy, clean victory over the Kansas City Royals, a Kansas City Royals team that is as lowly and as downtrodden and as bad as our New York Mets is. However, Kansas City able to set the tone in the first game of the series in abysmal fashion. And we spent all day yesterday talking about how the Mets could go through a game where they scored that many runs and presumably played that well in so many facets of the game and were unable to win what was a marathon, which was a grueling, brutal game. Kansas City comes out with the win, and it was just emblematic, and symptomatic of everything the Mets have done and have been in 2026. This game last night was sort of the antithesis of that game in every single way. It was quick, it was tidy, it was well played, it was well pitched, it was well executed, pretty much across the board as the Mets get a 6-2 win. The Mets get good starting pitching. The Mets play well in the field. The Mets have a rested bullpen that they were able to deploy successfully, including, at the very end of the game, bring in a player that they had just called up in Xavier Curry, and they didn't even have to go to their A relievers, even though they had the option of going to some of their A relievers, so kudos there. And they have a healthy lineup that produced, and it's simple. That is the formula, right? It's simple, but it's not easy. It sounds easy enough. Pitch well, execute on defense, get some timely bullpen, get some timely hitting, have a lineup that is representative of a major league team. Like, these don't sound like big asks, but in 2026 for the New York Mets, they've become big asks. And yes, again, easy enough, simple enough, but how many times has that happened in this season? I don't know. If we look at the calendar, if we look at the schedule to this point, it's been 80 some odd games, whatever. We probably count on maybe two hands the times where you could look at that formula, which is a pretty standardized formula for success in Major League Baseball. We probably count on two hands the times where the Mets have done that, how they have executed in every phase of the game. And when they do, they have the talent, and so it looks easy. Wins look effortless, and I understand. Again, that's why I opened the way I did. Kansas City sucks. Kansas City is bad, and the Mets are bad. But the Mets, Kansas City too, quite frankly, has some talent. The Mets have talent. And when your talent plays to its level and executes the way it should, things do look easy. And things seem like you can just exhale and you can just put that game on and kind of put your feet up a little bit and just kind of get through it. I know for a while it was 1-1. I know the offense didn't do what they needed to do for the bulk of that game, but when they needed to come through, they did. And then they put up a 5 spot. They changed the tenor of the game. There is, basically a garbage run scored when the Mets go to Xavier Curry in the 9th. And that's kind of it. Just pack it up. See you tomorrow. Day game after a night game. Mets will stay home. Kansas City will leave town. It's just, you watch a game like that and you just can't help but exhale and just think about, kind of like what we talked about yesterday with this lineup being lengthened with Jorge Polanco and some of these guys back, what could have been with just a couple more guys getting back a little sooner, or a couple guys producing when the Mets really needed it, or a couple pitchers not going into the tank. If Freddie Peralta didn't fall apart, if Nolan McLean didn't have those couple blow-up outings, if Christian Scott didn't hit the IL, if Clay Holmes didn't hit the IL, if. But we're going to be left wondering all season. Speaking of Christian Scott, he was excellent yet again. He was a big part of the reason why the Mets were in this game, why the Mets could score late, rally late, win the game. This is his 3rd start off of the injured list. It's his best start off of the injured list so far. He's been good, but he's not going deep. This game included, but he does get through 5. Last couple outings, kind of in the 4th inning. And I understand why. The Mets are being super careful. This is a guy who prior to the season hadn't pitched in a year and a half. This is a guy coming off a major arm surgery, the Tommy John, and the long rehab process, all of that. And now he's coming off of, this little kind of minor stint on the IL. They got to be careful with his innings anyway. They got to be careful with his arm. They have a hot commodity here in Christian Scott. He's going to be a big part of their rotation next year and hopefully for several years to come. So I understand why they're being careful. And again, they should be. But this was a fairly effortless performance from Christian Scott in a lot of ways. He goes 5 innings, gives up no runs, strikes out 5, walks 1. Again, just ho-hum, move along. I know some of you old heads are going to sit there and say, got to go deeper, got to give you more innings, whatever, regardless of the injury stuff that I just mentioned. I understand that. But in 2026 Major League Baseball, even if he wasn't coming off of the injury, even if he wasn't coming off of Tommy John, even if he wasn't going to be on an innings restriction and a pitch count, all of that stuff, 5 innings pitched, no runs, 5 strikeouts, 1 walk. That's a damn good place to start. It's also his 3rd scoreless start of the season. When you think about how his season started with all the nerves and all the walks in that first inning, in that first outing, and gets sent back down, it's amazing to think he's had 3, not shutouts, but 3 scoreless performances as a starter. And he lowered his ERA to 3.17. Christian Scott is really good. Christian Scott has been really good. And Christian Scott has, I think at this point it's fair to say, has achieved his prospect status. He has re-cemented himself in what will be the Mets' future plans, in what will be the future foundation, the future core of this team. You see it. Media outlets, beat reporters, fans, they talk about the core of this team, and some people debate certain other folks. I'm not going to get into it right now with Lindor or Alvarez or whatever. They're in my core. Other people can disagree. But the one thing people aren't disagreeing on, they're saying Soto, Benj, Ewing, McLean, and, drumroll please, Christian Scott. So it is great to see a guy who was the Mets' number 1 prospect, who was Nolan McLean before Nolan McLean got here, who was the Mets' best pitching prospect, and he was a bit of a forgotten man. And that's what happens when you lose a year and a half. But he's back now, and he's showing people who he was, and he's showing people who he is. And he said, hey, remember me, I'm still here, and I'm happy about it. Because the Mets need pitching. We'll talk more about pitching and where the Mets need to go in the final segment, but the Mets need a lot of pitching. And Nolan McLean is really good. Hopefully Nolan McLean is somebody who provides and lives up to the expectation. Jonah Tong's been up and down, but he's a good arm. Jack Wenninger is a good arm. Jonathan Santucci's a good arm. Zach Thornton's a good arm, but a lot of these guys, all of them, they're unproven. And Christian Scott is doing it right now. He's unproven too, don't get me wrong. But he's doing it right now at the major league level, as is Nolan McLean. And so when you look at those 2 guys, and they're going through the bumps, and they're riding the wave now in what is a lost season, this is valuable experience. Same thing for the guy we're going to talk about in a little bit, AJ Ewing. Same thing for Carson Benj. Get that stuff out of the way. Baseball players, all of them, 99.9% of them, progress is not linear. They're going to go through their bumps. They're going to take their lumps. They're going to take their beatings. The league's going to adjust, and they have to adjust back. That's always going to happen, especially to young players. If it's going to happen, and we know it will, let it happen in 2026. Let them hit the ground running in 2027. And I think this crop, Benj, Ewing, McLean, Scott, a little bit better than the previous crop. Vientos, Beatty, Mauricio. Goes without saying. I'm being a little sarcastic, but I think this is truly a group that the Mets can build around. And I think they're going to. Add Soto, add Alvarez, add Lindor, add Bo Bichette, I hope. And all of a sudden you've got the makings of a good team. Now they still have a lot of holes in this team for 2027, and the free agent class is terrible. We'll talk about that later. It's going to be difficult to add on top in some of these cases. But that's why you have to hope that these guys go through their growing pains. They're ready to be major contributors in a big way in 2027. And hell, Scott, Benj, Ewing, McLean, they're already big contributors. And so you just have to hope that they can continue to take that step and that progression, and that your stars are your stars. Soto's going to be Soto. He was great last year. He's better this year. Lindor has been great since he's been back. It's unfortunate he missed 2 months. His numbers aren't going to look great, but he's been good. And that's why Bo Bichette's important. But like I said, we'll talk about Bo Bichette in a little bit. In the meantime, baseball season is here, and now you can trade every game on Kalshi. You know what I do. I sit down to record this show, hang out with all you guys, but before I hit record, I pop on over to the Kalshi app, and I look for something interesting, and I look for some good value. And what I found was in the game coming up later on today, Francisco Lindor over 0.5 RBI. So over a half RBI, meaning if Lindor drives in 1 run in today's game, that is trading at 40 cents a share, which means $100 will get you $240. That's good value. I like the matchup for Lindor with Michael Wacha on the mound. Michael Wacha is a guy who, when he was with the Mets a few years ago, looked like he was going to be out of baseball. He is revamped and re-found himself, and hats off to him. But he's a guy who sits 93 with the fastball. Lindor being a switch hitter. I like the matchup. 0.5 RBI. It's not difficult. Lindor drives in runs. Lindor is pretty much cemented into the 4-hole right now, hitting behind Benj, who's on base all the time, Soto, who's on base every time, and Bichette, who, doesn't have the on-base numbers the first two guys have, but is a good hitter. He's going to find himself on base. Lindor also just missed the 3-run homer in the game last night. Launch angle's a little off, hits the ball to the wall, whatever. Absolutely crushed. So Lindor's in a good groove. I like Lindor over 0.5 RBI. $100 gets you $240. On Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there is no house. As the probability changes, you can trade into and out of your position. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app, use the code FANARCHBASEBALL to get $10 when you trade 10 Kalshi. Trade on anything. Must be 18 and over. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risks and may not be suitable for all investors. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory. Back to our New York Mets and A.J. Ewing. We talked about him in yesterday's show. We've talked about him a lot since he's come up. I've talked about him. I've kind of alluded to him in the show already. I don't know what that Macho Man Randy Savage fingers were, but that's alluded to him. Anyway, we talked about him, and for good reason. We've mentioned him a lot, and for good reason. The Mets may have... Now, look, this is not to take anything away from Carson Benj. Let me be clear about that. Carson Benj is also excellent. What Carson Benj is doing and the way Carson Benj rebounded from what was a very, very, very rough, let's say maybe 4.5 weeks to start his season, to start his major league career, where people were saying he has to be demoted. People are saying he wasn't ready. Look how ready Carson Benj looks now. Not taking anything away from him. But Carson Benj was top prospect in the organization, in that 1, 2, 3 bracket. Carson Benj was number 1 draft pick for the Mets, first round. It's just, he has a different kind of pedigree. He was also pushed differently. He was David Stern's first draft pick. Whether you love David Stearns, hate David Stearns, whatever, he was the guy that Stearns is like, yo, this is my guy. This guy. I got him. We love him. He's great. You're going to just wait. Not to say that A.J. Ewing didn't have prospect status. He did. Not to say that A.J. Ewing didn't do some things great. He does. Not to say A.J. Ewing didn't deserve the call-up and the accolades and the quick rise to the system. He does. But he was not perceived by many as the same level of prospect as Carson Benj. They're different players, despite being two fast, athletic, left-handed hitting outfielders with good arms and guys who play really hard on both sides of the ball. There are similarities, but they're different kinds of hitters. And I said this last week, and I'll probably say it a lot throughout the rest of the season. I like how the Mets now with Andy Green, who's a player development guy, who have now waved the white flag on 2026. They just kind of transitioned in once Lindor got back, and especially now that Polanco's back. The Mets said, you know what? We think A.J. Ewing is a leadoff hitter. Profile-wise, A.J. Ewing's a leadoff hitter. We think Carson Benj is a middle-of-the-lineup hitter. Profile-wise, he's a middle-of-the-lineup hitter. They had all this opportunity with Lindor being out. They pushed Benj to that leadoff spot. He took to it really well. That made sense at the time. But now that Lindor's back, and you don't have to stack lefties, and you can be a little bit more creative with your lineup, and your lineup is longer because Polanco's back too, it was brilliant to say, let's start this future now. Let's see these profiles play out now. Let's see if we're right. Let's throw AJ Ewing into the fire. Because AJ Ewing went back to double A, AJ Ewing demolished at every level he was at, no matter how long he was there. Whenever the Mets organization put a challenge in front of AJ Ewing, he rose to it. So they're like, you know what? Let's reward the kid. Let's challenge him again. Let's put another challenge in front of him. We think you can be a leadoff hitter, lead off in the major leagues. We think that's what your profile is. And now you get to see this lineup. Ewing, Soto, Bichette, Lindor, Benj, Polanco. Whew. All of a sudden, that's a good lineup. Left-handed hitters, right-handed hitters, contact hitters, guys with good eyes, guys with power, switch hitters. There's a lot there. And I don't want to sit here and wax poetic because I know a lot of you guys don't want to hear that because the Mets are still dead in the water in 2026. But Ewing's going to be on the team in 2027. Soto's going to be on the team in 2027. Lindor will be on the team. Benj will be on the team. Whether you like it or not, Polanco's going to be on the team. And in the final segment, I hope Bo Bichette is on the team. So if you're looking at that, if that's your top six, Sprinkle and Alvarez at the back of that lineup, looking pretty good. And all of this is possible because AJ Ewing has been a revelation. After going 4 for 4 2 days ago with a home run, 4 runs scored, 3 RBI, and a walk on base 5 times, he follows that up with a 2 for 5 day where he hits another home run, knocks in another run, of course. I mean, the guy is even showing power that we didn't expect, or we didn't expect this early. Same could be said for Benj, by the way. I think a lot of people would have thought like, hey, if Benj hits like 10, 12, 15 home runs, high watermark, great. Benj is sitting at what, like 11 or 12 right now with still plenty of season to play. AJ Ewing, who comes up after him, is sitting at 7. And a lot of people thought, well, he's not going to hit home runs. If AJ Ewing turns into a guy that can hit like 15 or 18 with everything else he does well, and Benj turns into a guy that might hit 25, with Soto, with Lindor, with, I hope, Bichette long-term, man. Sorry to bury the lead on that one, but I think you knew where I was going with Bichette. This has the makings of a really good lineup. Really good depth, really good length in that lineup. And all told, you look at AJ Ewing's season to this point, his slash line, 279, 360, 453. 279 batting average, 360 on base, 453 slug. All of that totals out to an 813 OPS. An 813 OPS. He's 21 years old. He's got 7 home runs, 9 RBI. 7 home runs, 24 RBI, 9 stolen bases, and he's doing all that while playing an excellent center field. I'm going to stop short of saying 5-tool player because I don't know if the power will ever truly be at a level where you can call him that. But in terms of toolsiness, is he 5? He's 5. He may not be a 5-tool player, but he's 5-toolsy. He's fast. He plays defense. He has a good arm. He can hit for a good average, and it seems like he can sprinkle in some pop. He's toolsy. And then somebody said this on Twitter today, and I wish I remembered who because I'd love to shout him out. I think they were kind of being like a little bit joking, but a little bit serious. They said, man, Mets might want to sign AJ Ewing to a pre-arbitration contract extension before it gets too expensive to do so. And some of you guys might be saying, John, that's crazy. He's had 170 something at bats or whatever. They might want to think about it. You want to talk about cost control in the future. You want to talk about, which we don't have to worry about with Steve Cohen, but if there's a lockout and if there's a salary cap, and I think there will be a lockout, but I don't think there'll be a salary cap ever. I don't think the union will go for it. But if there is some kind of penalties, some kind of punitive additions to spending a lot of money, how you get in front of that is you do what the Atlanta Braves do. They find a guy, they identify a guy, they're aggressive with their call-ups when they think he's ready, and then they sign him. And stranger things, crazier things have been done, and the Mets might want to do that because that's how good AJ Ewing has been. Now, could that blow up in your face? Sure. Could. A guy could be a flash in the pan and never really live up to it after that. But then you look at, who started for the Mets on opening day, and I know he's not been good here, but Milwaukee Brewers gave Freddie Peralta like a $50 million contract when he was not the Freddie Peralta that the Mets traded for. And that's what allowed him to be making $8 million this year, which, again, because he's been bad, it works out for the Mets. But, the Mets thought they were getting an ace for $8 million. Where do you get one of those? So sometimes these early extensions work. Maybe the Mets should consider that. I don't know if I'm ready to put my stamp of approval on that, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea. Last segment today, we're going to talk about the fact that Bo Bichette and Clay Holmes are two people that have been brought up in trade rumors because the Mets are bad. The Mets are out of it. And I think a lot of people are looking at both of them as expiring deals. So when you talk about a Luke Weaver, different situation. You talk about Francisco Alvarez, different situation. You start to talk about these guys, and I'm not even going to mention Francisco Lindor. I'm not giving any credence to that. But you talk about these guys who are going to be, they're on expiring deals. The Mets are going to trade all of them, presumably, right? So Peralta, expiring deal, trade him. Minter, expiring deal, trade him. Raley, expiring deal, trade him. Luis Robert Jr., he's got the team option, so essentially that's an expiring deal. I don't know what you can get for him, but the Mets should probably get him off the roster so that they can just focus on A.J. Ewing, Carson Bench, and Juan Soto. But these guys are all on expiring deals. So if you can get him out of here, get him out of here. And on the surface, you'd look at that and you'd say, well, Bo Bichette has the opt-out, so he controls his destiny. He might be on an expiring deal. And Clay Holmes has a player option, which he is going to decline. So he is also on this quote-unquote expiring deal. Not only do I think the Mets should not trade either one of them, but I think the Mets should extend both of them. And shout out to Ryan Finkelstein, who does a great job over at Locked On Mets. He brought this up on the show, and I cannot agree with him more. We were having simultaneous thoughts on this. Both of these players not only fit what the Mets are trying to do in 2027, but they fit what the Mets are trying to do in the immediate future beyond that, in the mid-tier future. We'll start with Clay Holmes. Right now, the Mets need starting pitching. The Mets also need reliable innings. In 2027, the Mets are going to have Nolan McLean, Christian Scott, Sean Manaea. Those guys are going to be there. I don't think Kodai Senga is going to be there. I hope Kodai Senga is not there. I hope they find a way to move him. So I'm going to bank on the fact that the Mets try and figure out a way to get away from Kodai Senga. But that's basically what you have. McLean, Scott, Manaea. Now, maybe the Mets are players for Tarek Skubal. We can talk about that in the future. That's not a conversation for today. Maybe they are players for him. I think they will be. But you need somebody else who can pitch like a 2 or a 3. You need somebody else who can give you innings, who's got that dog in him, who's got that bulldog mentality, who pitches through inning limits, who pitches through pitch counts, who pitches through walls. Not who folds up like Kodai Senga, not who crumbles like David Peterson. You need Clay Holmes. Clay Holmes is getting paid right now, and this is why he's not going to accept the option. When he signed the deal with the Mets to transition from the bullpen to the starting pitching role, he took a deal that paid him like a top-end relief pitcher, like a closer. Makes $12 million a year. And I think the thought process was, if this doesn't work out with you as a starter, even though we believe in it, and you believe in it, and you're committed to it, we can put you in the bullpen, and we don't mind paying you that role or that money for a role that we know you're going to be successful at. He has exceeded expectations twice in a row, 2 seasons in a row. And were it not for a fluky injury where he gets struck with a baseball, he'd be everything this team needs. And I think he's everything this team needs in 2027, 2028, probably 2029. I know he's already, coming up on his mid-30s, but I think that's why you can approach him and why you should approach him with an extension sooner rather than later. He gets back. He's pitching again. He's healthy. I think you get together with his agent. You try to figure out a way to sign Clay Holmes to like a 3-year extension for, I don't know, $22 million a year. Something like that. 22, 23, 25, 20, whatever. somewhere between $20 and $25 million a year. That's what I think you try to do. And I think he would be agreeable to that. Clay Holmes has spent a lot of time in New York between the Yankees and the Mets. He knows he's not going to get some ultra mega contract. He's not that kind of guy, and he's not that kind of age. But you can reward him for everything he's done for this franchise. And you can reward, or rather, he can sort of not reward the team, but make good with the team, where it's like, hey, you guys gave me the opportunity to start, and I'm going to give you a little bit of sort of loyalty in return for wanting to stay here, because maybe on the open market, maybe he could get 4 years, or maybe on the open market, he can get $25 million, whatever. But you just work it out with him. What's a number that makes sense? You get him in a room. You don't have to be strict negotiators here. Get Clay Holmes in a room, get his agent with him, look him in the eye and say, hey, man, we like what you're doing. I think you like being here. We like having you here. I think you like New York. New York likes you. What are we talking? What kind of number? What is it going to take? And I'm not saying you write him a blank check, whatever he says, but it's been, what's it going to take? Let's be honest. Let's cut through the bull. Let's cut through the minutia. How can we get this done? We want to keep you here for 3 more years. Maybe Clay Holmes says, it's 4 more years. Okay, well, we don't really want to do 4, or maybe they just do 4, or whatever. I don't know. But I think there's a clear-cut avenue to making sure that happens. On the Bo Bichette side of things are very similar. Now, unlike Holmes, Bo Bichette is a lot younger. Unlike Holmes, Bo Bichette is making a lot of money. I don't know if he's going to opt out. He might not. He's saying all the right things. I looked at this as a 3-year commitment when I signed it. It's nice to have that flexibility, but I took this as a 3-year deal. That's great to hear. Maybe he means it. Maybe he doesn't. I have no idea. Maybe he likes it here. Maybe he doesn't. I have no idea. I don't know Bo Bichette. Never been in the locker room, never been in the clubhouse. I don't know. But what I do know is Bo Bichette, the Mets need offense. The Mets need infield help. And Bo Bichette will provide both of those things. On yesterday's show, we talked about how the Mets are set in the outfield. The Mets have a really good catching tandem situation. But on the infield, it's Francisco Lindor, and then you got a lot of question marks. What a way to solidify that infield with Bo Bichette playing third. Bo Bichette has graded out as an excellent third baseman to this point. Not good, excellent. I thought he'd be good. He's been better than that. And the eye test tells you he's better. And the defensive metrics and measurements, which are a flawed scale, but they tell you he's top tier. And I think he'd be even better if he didn't have to bounce over to shortstop on the fly and play there for 2 months. And listen, he's not Lindor. He's a bad shortstop. But he did it admirably. He filled in for him very well. Mets didn't want to do it. Begrudgingly, they had to. Lindor got hurt. Mauricio got hurt. They had no choice. And Bo Bichette did it. He's a team guy. But if he stayed at third this whole season, I think he'd be even better. He plays excellent third base. And that's not even talking about the offensive side. And for the offensive side, I'll just say this. Bo Bichette is the right age. He is the right kind of hitter in terms of being right-handed, being a bat-to-ball guy, being a, kind of doubles machine, an RBI machine. He is the right complement for Juan Soto. A couple of years ago on Till Mets Do Us Apart, me and Ibby had Manny Gomez, who used to cover the Mets for the NJ Advance. He's not on the beat anymore. But he was a great guest and did a great job covering the Mets. And he said, it wasn't reporting, just the feeling he was getting was that he thought the Mets wanted to sign Juan Soto and then a year later sign Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and try to do Manny and Big Papi 2.0. 2 guys who were right-handed, left-handed, 2 guys who mash in the middle of the lineup, 2 guys who were 26, 27 years old, have them together for a decade. Was that true? I don't know. Mets never got their chance. Toronto gave an unbelievable offer to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. that he couldn't turn down. He loves it up there. They love him up there. So the Mets never got their opportunity. So it goes. What the Mets did was they signed another comparably aged 27-year-old player from Toronto who's a right-handed hitter, who is a really good complement to Juan Soto. And they gave him this deal. They didn't want to go long term. We can criticize Stearns for that, whatever. We can take what Steve Cohen said about these kinds of deals and being careful on the short term because there's an adjustment period and maybe you have to consider that and you have to give guys a 5-year deal if you don't want to or a 7-year deal or whatever. But I think Bo Bichette's really good. And if you look at Bo Bichette's numbers from like May 25th to now, he's Bo Bichette. He's the Bo Bichette that the Mets thought they were getting. Now, I said on a few different episodes of this show back like the first 2 weeks that I was doing it, that if we get to the end of the season and Bo Bichette has good numbers, but the Mets suck and they miss the playoffs, no Met fan is going to care. And I get that. And you shouldn't. Because when the Mets needed Bo Bichette most, he wasn't there. He couldn't pick up he wasn't ready early in his Mets tenure to pick up the slack for Soto being out and then Lindor being out. I'm not asking you to feel badly for Bo Bichette. He makes a lot of money. He's a professional. He grew up in baseball clubhouses. He came here willingly. Nobody forced him to do it. All of that is true. I'm not asking you to feel badly for him. What I'm saying is you have to understand that after that adjustment period, he has been as advertised offensively, and he's been better than advertised defensively. He is the perfect player for the New York Mets. And when you look beyond Bo Bichette, if you don't believe me for whatever reason and you want him gone and you don't think he's worth the money, I don't care, whatever. Look at this free agent class. Best free agent offensive player, Jazz Chisholm. So now, what? Mets sign Jazz Chisholm? I don't think so. You want to trade assets? People are already upset that the Mets farm system doesn't look as good as it did a year ago, despite the fact that they're not acknowledging that, Christian Scott basically re-graduated, Nolan McLean graduated, AJ Ewing graduated, Carson Benz graduated. Zach Thornton's probably going to come back up over the weekend. The farm system took a hit in rankings because they had 4 guys make the leap, basically all in one season. And then they also traded 2 top 100 guys to get Freddie Peralta. So the farm system's going to look like it took a bit of a hit. But if you want to stand by that and you want to say, look, the farm system's down, because there are some guys that, took a step back as prospects and progress isn't linear and whatever, development isn't linear. But you want to trade some of those assets for an offensive piece? Or do you just want to figure out how to get Bo Bichette to stay here? I would try to get Bo Bichette to stay here. That would be my goal. I think that's more prudent. I think it's smarter. I think after the adjustment to a new team and a new city and a new league and a lot of money, I think Bo Bichette's going to be just fine. So I think the Mets should do everything they can to keep these 2 guys. Because the Mets probably need, and this is why I lumped them together, not just for the sake of the segment. The Mets need a starting pitcher. If they bring back Clay Holmes, they still need one anyway. Where would they be without him? If the Mets bring back Bo Bichette or Bo Bichette just opts in or whatever, they still need an offensive player somewhere. First base, DH, second base, I don't know. They need another piece. Doesn't have to be a superstar player because they have Lindor and Soto and Bichette, but they're going to probably need another bat, a complementary bat. That's with Bichette. Where do they go without Bichette? And that's the problem. It's if not these guys, then who? But also they need pieces with these guys. If they move on from these guys, then what? That's going to do it for this episode of Mets Daily. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, sitting at just over 4,000 subscribers, trying to get to 5,000. Maybe we can do that before the season ends, but more importantly, we would love for you to be a part of it. This has been a wonderful experience for me over the last month or 5.5 weeks or so. I'm having a blast doing it, giving you a little bit of a different look into the way that I talk about the New York Mets. Because if you've jumped over to Till Mets Do His Part, you know that it's different from what we do here, what I do here. And both things are a tremendous amount of fun. We did Till Mets Do His Part today for 2 hours. And I'm right back, or yesterday for 2 hours, and I'm right back here talking to you again. And so both things are great, but this has been so much fun. to kind of dive deep into these topics 5 days a week. So if you're having fun, tell your friends, subscribe to the channel, see if we can get to 5,000. We'd love for you to be a part of it. Till next time, I'm John Saponaro. See you tomorrow.